Web terminology, introduction to the web. HTML versus XHTML. I think it's important to understand a little bit about the differences between these two languages. They're very similar. It's just that XHTML replaced HTML as a standard for web pages, and I believe that was back around 1999. And they have very similar coding rules. And in our code examples, we'll be using HTML. And the reason that I think that it's important to know about the differences is you may look at code and think that it's just flat out wrong after this class that's out on the web. And well, if you're judging it based on, hey, it's not XHTML compliant, then you're probably right. And here are some of the differences. Here in this HTML column, you used to be able to use uppercase element and attribute names. For example, this paragraph element, or this paragraph tag as we call it, used to be able to be in uppercase, but in XHTML they said, hey, no more of that. We're going to formalize this enough where all of our tags and elements are in lowercase. You used to be able to do it in either or, uppercase or lowercase. So if you ever see code like that that's in uppercase, it's not maybe necessarily that it's wrong. It was just HTML. Attributes would be in quotes. In this particular example, we have a table data or table cell, and we said, hey, we don't want text inside of it to wrap around onto 2 lines. We just wanted it to be on 1 line. So we had a no wrap attribute. And in the HTML column, you can see how it used to look. Now, you have to have your attributes in quotations. It's standard. You'll always see it that way. Non-empty elements must have closing tags. Okay, for example, you have a paragraph, and I'm not even going to confuse you with looking at the HTML side. Let's just say that in the XHTML column, you have a starting paragraph tag and an ending paragraph tag. Okay, if you have a starting tag, you have to have an ending tag. And where that's not the case, I'll let you know. There's not a whole lot of examples of that, but here's one. Let's look at this last line. Empty tags must have a space, then a / ending the tag. So we're looking at the break tag here, the BR, how it used to look, and then in XHTML, the way that a break tag looks. What this does is it introduces a line break. Remember I told you in another set of slides that white space is ignored? Well, you can, with the break tag, cause some white space to appear. It introduces a line break, and that'll just be a blank line. All right, and the way that these empty tags, or tags, we call them empty tags or tags that stand alone, or standalone tags, such as a break tag, you just do the tag, space, and then a /. And that's the syntax for those standalone tags. They don't have pairs. They don't have an opening and closing pair. Here's some sample HTML codes. Lines 1 and 2 up at the top. It's an XML declaration and a DTD, which is a document type definition. Really, all you need to know there is that if you look across line 2 toward the end, it says DTD XHTML 1.0 strict. That's how our documents are going to be coded, is XHTML strict. So you won't have to memorize that. Just know that it belongs at the top of a page. You just need to recognize that it belongs there. Now if we go down to line 3, this is where our HTML tag starts. And there's something to the right called a namespace attribute. Don't worry about that even. For now, let's just focus on the idea that you have an HTML tag, and that's the start of your document really. Where you have an opening one, down on line 10 you have a closing one. You have something called a head tag. On line 4, it opens, it closes on line 7. And inside of the head tag you can have a title. Those are on lines 5 and 6, opening and closing tags. And what those do for you, that title that's in the side of those head tags, that's what creates literally the title in the blue bar at the top of your browser. So if you want to give your page a name, that's where you do it, right there in the title tags. Then you have the body. This is where the content of your page will be placed. So the body is where all of the viewable end user viewable content is going to be contained. this is the format of an HTML page. File naming conventions. For this class, no spaces, no special characters. When we create our files, it's better to use lowercase letters. And the reason why no spaces, no special characters in lowercase letters is because we don't know what server you're going to be on. It could be a Linux or Apache server, or it could be a Windows server. Windows may be a little more forgiving, whereas if you have a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, the end user has to type the exact address to get to a page as you typed it when you saved it. Okay, so if it has upper and lowercase, they better make sure that they have typed upper and lowercase letters to get to your page. And so we try to adhere to, in this class, not knowing which server we're going to be on, all lowercase letters. File name extensions. As I mentioned in a previous set of slides, there are a lot of different file types that we work with. And here are a few: HTML and HTML, which you are able to use either one. I like HTML just because it's shorter, and I know it's an HTML page, but there's no difference, truly. You work with GIF files, JPEGs. One that I didn't put on this slide is a PNG, SWIFTs, SWFs, potentially movie files, MOVs, AVIs, AIFs, and just a host of other file extensions that you could work with in this class. And what these are, these would really be external resources, external to your HTML page that you would link to. Cascading style sheets. All right. CSS. These are text-based files, and they're commonly used to format web pages. They can change things such as fonts, borders, and they can position elements on the page. For example, if you want an image to appear in a certain location, you can use cascading style sheet code to get it there. Formatting is saved in a .css file. This would be an external file. You'll have your HTML files and then external files called CSS files. The benefits, and this is really cool, this is where the power of cascading style sheet code comes in. You can make a change in one cascading style sheet file, and if that file is used by 100 pages in your site, by changing that one formatting, making that one formatting change in your CSS file, you can change all 100 pages in your site instantly just by making one change and saving the CSS file. That's why we like them. We'll talk more about that later on. In fact, that is a very, very, very large topic in the bulk of the topics for this course. Extensible markup language, you may have heard of this. It's called XML, and this would be an example of what it looks like. XHTML has predefined tag sets. XML does not. We won't be dealing with any XML in this class, so I'm not going to go over this particular example, but if you want to, you can look at it and read it. It's a recipe, and the tags have been created by the users or by a company, and they are custom tags such as recipe, title, ingredient. Those are not standard HTML tags. There's a concept of something called DHTML, and that's caused a lot of confusion for folks in the past. So let me just quickly explain what that is. It's a mix of XHTML, which is just our HTML pages, JavaScript, cascading style sheet code, which is how you format your pages. When I say formatting, I mean things like changing the colors of your text and the size of it. And then something called the document object model. Okay, so what does that mean? It just means that you're using a couple of different languages all wrapped up together inside of an HTML file to do something more than XHTML originally had available to it. XHTML is pretty boring. It's pretty bland. It's hypertext markup language. What does it do? Makes hypertext links. Okay, you could link to other documents. Well, that's great, but what if you wanted to add some interactivity such as animations, drag and dropping, and creating rollover buttons so that when you moved over a button it changed into something else or it highlighted? Okay, those are things that you couldn't do with HTML. So we had to incorporate JavaScript and cascading style sheet code to get those things done. And so I guess if there's anything that I can say about HTMLs, when you just learn HTML, you can't just learn it by itself. You need to know a little bit about CSS and JavaScript to really effectively get much done and to add any interactivity to your pages. Okay, then there's something, when we talk about JavaScript, it's not like Java. Java is a programming language in and of itself that looks like the programming language and is very similar to the programming language C and C++. Okay, JavaScript's a little bit different. It's got a different syntax to it, and what it does, it just extends the functionality of XHTML. Like I said before, HTML did nothing but allow you to link to other pages with hypertext links, but with JavaScript you can add interactivity such as rollovers, closing browser windows, and something called browser sniffing, where that's when you look at somebody's browser. When they open a page, you have a JavaScript that asks, hey, what browser is this? And if they said Firefox, well, you could display one page, and if it said Internet Explorer, it could display a different page, or send you in a different direction, or give you a message that says, hey, we don't support that browser. So it's something called browser sniffing that can be done with JavaScript. Not as common as it used to be. Web applications are websites that deliver dynamic data or are data-driven. And we all know examples of these, such as Amazon.com or eBay.com. These are web applications, or e-commerce applications, if you will. These are called web apps. And they commonly connect to databases, and that's a little bit outside of the scope of what we'll cover in this class. Maybe a little bit at the end, we might talk about it.